In today's video, we're going to be talking about 3 pictures that have disturbing backstories to them. But before we begin, if you're a fan of true crime stories delivered in story format, then I highly suggest you subscribe to my channel as I try to do this once a week. But with all that being said, let's begin. On the 18th of May 1980, David Johnston went out to Washington to visit the notorious mountain, Mount St. Helens. Now, David is what you call a volcanist, basically an expert of volcanoes, on how they form and how they erupt. Now, an important factor to the story, when David got to the mountain, he knew that at any time the mountain was due to erupt. And because of that, that was one of the reasons why David wanted to go to this mountain, because he wanted to study on what happens when a volcano erupts. Now, at the time when he actually got to the mountain, David was certain that the mountain would be pretty safe to camp on, at least from a distance. But David wasn't planning to camp on this mountain. He was planning to take a couple of pictures of the mountain and all of its landscapes. But as time went on, David got really tired and decided to go further away from the mountain and set up camp. But what David did not realize, he was in a red zone layer. And for those who don't know what that means, when a volcano erupts, it produces lava, and where that lava goes is in the red zone layer. So the red zone layer is basically where scientists know that lava is going to be there if it ever erupts. Combined with the fact that the volcano was going to erupt anytime soon, this all became into a very bad situation. But obviously, David did not know that. Everything seemed normal to David until it wasn't. The next morning, David would wake up and everything was normal. He decided he wanted to relax that day and wanted to just sit by the volcano and watch it, which to us here in this story right now is a bad idea, because he's in the red zone layer, and if the volcano erupts, then he's finished. But once again, David was oblivious to this. 1 hour would go by and nothing would happen, until suddenly the world beneath David would tremble and the volcano would erupt. David was instantly vaporized by the lava, but unfortunately he wouldn't be the only death that would happen. 56 other people would also get consumed by the lava and ultimately lose their lives on that day. After this incident, the people of Washington would all get together and make a memorial for David and the 56 others. Here's a picture of the memorial and also a picture of David relaxing on his camp before ultimately a day later he would be consumed by the lava. 2 young women named Kerma and Lisanne, who were Dutch travellers that travelled around the world. So what happened to them would truly leave the community saddened. The story begins on April 1st. The 2 young women would touch down on Panorama, which is close to Costa Rica. Now, the 2 were getting ready to do one of their bucket list hikes, which was the El Pastina Trail. This trail was known for its beautiful scenes and amazing terrain, but there's a section of the trail where you're very isolated. Not to mention there's trees everywhere, and you're on this narrow path, which for a lot of people that would make them uneasy. But other than that, the trail was amazing. So the girls would get into Panorama about 5 to 6 a.m. and would get some sleep and then set off around 11:30 a.m. The 2 girls' parents have set up an appointment where basically the girls would get to a spot and they would call their parents or text them saying that they're okay, so the parents are sure that the girls are safe. So when a day went by, so April 2nd, and the girls did not attend to their appointment, the parents knew that there was something wrong straight away. A couple of days later, the parents would arrive in Panama and would set up a massive search party to find the girls. Everybody would come together to help the parents. Volunteers, police, and everyone that was just on the island would all come together and make a massive search party. The search party would comb the land for 10 days but still not find anything. Now a whole 10 weeks later, when the search was launched and everybody at this point was coming to the reality the girls were never going to be found, and the fact that what happened to the girls will never be discovered until a woman handed in a blue backpack, which the backpack belonged to one of the girls. What is strange though, when the woman handed the backpack in, she said she found it a while ago. She was scared of giving it in, which investigators found suspicious, as you would. But when they opened the bag, they found both of the girls' phones. One of the phones had some evidence of someone trying to call 911, but due to the lack of signal, the call wouldn't go through. The call was made an hour after the girls started their hike. The other phone was turned on intermediately between the 5th and the 11th of April, but the incorrect pin was put in, so whoever was trying to get into the phone just forgot about it and turned it off completely. Now, moving on to the most disturbing part of this story, the camera. What the investigators saw on the camera was truly disturbing. The camera started off normal, the girls were having fun, but it took a sinister turn. Skip forward to picture 5. There was a picture of a girl's head, completely soaked with blood. No one knew what happened, but the likely causes is someone or something attacked the girl. But unfortunately, we will never know, because a couple of weeks later, a pelvis bone was discovered, along with a foot inside of a boot. DNA samples would come back and it would turn out to be the 2 girls. So no one will ever know what happened to the girls. Did they get attacked by a human? Or was it an animal? We just don't know. Here is a picture of the 2 girls before hours later they would vanish. One afternoon, a 22-year-old woman named Sailor Williams wanted to go out on a hike. The hike that she wanted to go out on was Santa Barbara Trail, which is situated in California. She was not going alone though. Her best friend Brenda Vega, who was also 22, wanted to join along. The two women were not experts at hiking whatsoever. They only hiked as a part-time hobby, so the trail that they chose was truly strange. Even though Santa Barbara Trail is a very nice trail and has very nice scenery, it's also known for its treacherous terrain, and there's many opportunities of the trail where you could easily get lost if you don't know what you're doing. Not to mention there's a lot of steep cliffs, so the fact that they chose this trail truly left investigators baffled. At around the afternoon, the two women got ready to set off to the trail. Just about half an hour later, the two women would get onto the trail and start the journey. Straight away, the hike wasn't going too well, as both of their phones would die, but despite that, the two women would still pursue. As it continued deeper into the trail and the terrain began to get more treacherous, and once again remember, the women were not experienced or did not have their phone at this point. Not to mention they weren't even expecting this at all. They thought this trail was going to be an easy trail. This combined the fact that the sunlight was going and everything was becoming more darker and darker, and the women did not bring flashlights either because they weren't anticipating to stay out this long. So with all this combined, the women finally decided that they don't want to do this anymore and they wanted to go back to the car. But this is where they realized their grave mistake. As they look around the trail, they realize that they can't remember which way they came from, and with no flashlights or phone, the women were officially lost. The story gets even worse though. Sailor fractured her leg by landing on it badly. Vega would try her best to carry Sailor, but unfortunately she just wasn't strong enough to. So after sitting down and thinking the situation out, both of them came to an agreement that Sailor would sit tight and start shouting for help, and Vega would continue the walk and try to find help that way, and if she did, she would get the rescuers to come pick up Sailor. So the two women would hug and then say their goodbyes. Now going back in time, 3 hikers would decide that they don't want to go into work today and they just don't feel like working today. So all 3 of them would call off and then they would get ready to go on a hike. Now these 3 hikers were actually experienced hikers, so they'd get all their gear together and quickly arrive to the hiking destination. They began the hike and everything went normal. They're taking pictures and having an amazing time. One of the friends would see a clearing and start climbing the wall for some reason, and the other friend who's been taking pictures this whole time would snap a couple of pictures of the friend. And the friend that was taking pictures would look down to check the pictures. As he was looking at these pictures, he would notice something. There was something on the ground. It looked like red hair. As he flicks through another picture, it clearly looks like a woman's head, face down straight into the ground. He turns around and sees Sailor laying face down on the ground. Of course, he would quickly shout his friends to quickly help him. They would call the police and Sailor would get airlifted out to the nearest hospital and would ultimately be saved. But unfortunately for Vega, things wouldn't turn out the same. A couple of days later, her body was found. She was deceased, and when her body was examined, it looked like she had loads of fractures from falling, and those fractures were on her leg. So those fractures would ultimately stop her from moving. She would ultimately lay down and hope for the best, but unfortunately that wouldn't be the case. Here is the pictures that the hikers took when Sailor was only a couple of feet away.